Yeah, Laura.
Because it's like coffee, but it's still
How about?
bubbles. I don't know. Just make it funny.
Oh, you did that. Oh, I thought it was a.
No, I need it.
Move again.
Yes.
Where are we going?
Uh-huh.
Where are we going?
When?
We're outside.
Later? After? After this, okay?
After this, there's gonna be a Betty Walk party.
Almost at the club.
The PWO club.
Interesting.
Arlene has only cooked this a billion times. Since 2008.
It's been a minute though. Okay. So we're gonna get started very soon. My goal is to be done
Wait, I
by.
don't think they go upstairs, or do you want?
My goal is to be done by like 3:30, right? So let's get started now. This is about it.
Welcome to Arlene.
It says there's one viewer. We have one viewer.
Everything you say.
Yes!
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I love this real talk.
Okay. Are we ready? Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Break Our Chains. It's WOED, Basic Women's Orientation. Let's start off with introductions and then icebreaker. Yeah. Just say your names, your org, and why we're here. Right. My name is Arlene. I am, and your PGP and your position, I guess, within your org. Okay. Right. My name is Arlene. PGP.
Wait, your family. Adding. Wherever. But yeah, wherever.
Okay. So again, my name is Arlene from GAB. I am the finance officer for GAB NY. My family, PGP is her, she. Oh yes, my family is from Pampanga in the Philippines. My dad is Ilocano. I don't know his side, unfortunately. So I'm just very familiar with the Pampanga side. And I'm here because I'm facilitating.
Hey.
I'm Benji, she, her, hers. My family's from Mexico. I'm from Chicago, but my family, they're all from this tiny little town in Mexico. It's really beautiful. It's called Araro, A-R-A-R-O. We have natural springs, it's great. Yeah, we have really good mineral water. It's wonderful. What else?
You said your org, right?
Yeah, your org.
Oh, I don't really have an order. The reason I'm here is because Anna was like, hey, you should come and hang out and learn. And I said, I want to learn. So yeah, and yeah, I met a lot of you all before and you guys are great.
Welcome.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm May, Project Gabriella, New York. She, her, hers. I'm here today because I'm starting to really fall in love with you. I'm saying it a lot, so I'm telling more people. I know, but it feels different. And every time we're coming on Sundays, I'm just like, yo. What's your position? I like it. Oh, I am co-sec-gen and my family for
Gabrielle.
ABNJ. And my family, my dad is from Baguio and my mom is from Bataan, but we have a house in Manila, in Marikina.
Hi everyone, I'm Janine. I am from Gabrielle, New York. My PGPs are she, her. I am the Deputy Secretary General also for Education, but I'm facilitating. And I'm here also just like as support in terms of a lot of us have taken this many times, and the important part of basic women's orientation is it shouldn't be seen as like a Gabriella EP or a Gabriella New York EP. This really is women's work is half of all of our work, right? If you're organizing workers, if you're organizing youth, right now we have mothers, etc. So basic women's orientation is really understanding like what half of our work really looks like. So. Family. And that's my question too. So my father is from Cebu and my mother is from Palote.
Hi everyone, I'm Cole. I am chair of Gabrielle, New York, and my mom's from Baguio, and I'm here today. My pronouns are they them, and I'm here today because I'm helping to support, but also want to connect and just talk about the ways in which the basic problems are present within the movement in terms of women and children.
Hi everybody, I'm Anna, I use she, her, hers. I'm DevSec Gen of Anakbayan, New Jersey. My family is from Nicaragua and Costa Rica. I was born in Nicaragua. And I'm here because I've heard of the new women's committee that ABNJ is leading. So I really, I haven't taken the CD before. I've seen different things that GAB has done, but I'm really excited to hear your analysis and to bring that into our future work with the women's committee. And just go hard.
Yes. Go hard.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Jonathan. I'm he, him, his. I'm ED officer of ABNJ. And I'm here because I think it's an important study, especially because sort of the, in one of the things that needs to get rectified in Maoist thought is the focus on the family unit and sort of not including women as much. So yeah, it's important stuff. Oh, my family's from Bawang, Batangas, so BA. BA all day.
Stop.
We provincial now.
Wow.
Okay.
I don't think anyone's mentioned this city so far.
My name is Brian. I use they and he. I am a member of ABNJ. I have no title. Let's see. My family is Taiwanese, so both my parents are from Taiwan. And I'm here, I don't know, to deepen my analysis and also just learn more shit.
Right on.
Okay. Hello. I'm Laura. She, her, hers. I'm the vice chairperson of ABNJ. I'm also part of the women's committee. I am here because I haven't taken BWO before, but I would like to deepen my analysis of the women's sector and really apply that to our organizing. Yes.
You're also operating the website.
Oh yeah, it's my laptop.
Icebreaker?
Yes.
All right, cool. So, in an even floor, many of us are coming from different orgs or no orgs. So, we're just gonna play something really quick to get to know each other. So it's called Connection. Basically, what you're gonna say again is you're gonna reintroduce yourself. So you'd be like, "Hey, I'm Cole," and you're gonna say something about you that's true. And then you have to say something about you that's true until somebody finds a connection to you based on that truth. So if I'm like, my name's Cole, and my family's from Baguio, and then May would be like, connection, because your dad's my dad. And then I'm May, and I like blah blah blah. But let's try to make it topic-wise. So something related to your org work or like just things that you're generally interested in, like organizing around issues that you are like particularly interested in. So I can start. So again, I'm Cole. Pronouns are they them, and I have only taken BWO once. Okay. I have been in an org for 2 years. I just went on Expo.
Oh, connected! I was like, wait, I did that too. Okay. Do I start from our connection or just keep going?
You can start from mine.
Okay. So I'm Janine, she, her, hers. I just went on Expo also in Mindanao. Okay.
Since I already connected, I already went. So
Yeah, I went on Expo in Mindanao. Okay, yes, other people have not gone on Expo in Mindanao.
Okay. Connection.
I also went to Mindanao. J9 was my team lead. So that's why I was like getting the nudge. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm May, and what I find particularly really interesting, especially my observation with New Jersey, is that they're very connected to the migrants locally, and that's something that New York is still trying to navigate, but that's what I noticed big time in New Jersey. And
You just like you feel similarly.
Okay, connection. So I am from New Jersey. I actually I was born in Secaucus, but I've always lived in Jersey City. My parents are both from Batangas.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Your parents know each other?
Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah. Oh, connection.
I love the like delayed connection shade.
John, him, his, and my favorite part of my parents. My mom is from Batangas, and my favorite part of organizing is mass work.
Is this for the order?
Talking to people because I'm kind of boring and it gives me something to talk about.
Oh, the delivery is it here?
No, that's
Keep going.
No.
I
That's
hate mass.
my favorite ED is PSR.
Oh, connection actually. Really Arlene, gosh, this is hard.
You start with PSR.
Yeah. What about
Yeah.
PSR?
Okay, so I love PSR. Like it really
What's
sort
PSR again?
of What is it?
Philippine
Society. Yeah.
It's a book.
It really sort of breaks down.
Do you need money? Is it on your requirement?
Yes, if I can get like $5.
Okay.
Okay, cool. You can Venmo me.
So we-
Sure, just in the middle.
Should we
Oh,
time
but
out?
not in front of the projector. Maybe in the.
Okay, that's good.
Sorry guys, food came.
Yeah.
Food's important.
Yeah.
It's good for a few people.
Oh, that's one thing, right? For the movement, we need food for the movement. So
Yeah.
important.
Anyone want to connect on
Connect
that?
with
That
food for us.
function of
Oh, okay, cool.
Hi, I'm Brian. I use they and he. I agree that we need food for the movement. And I really am interested in trying to see how I like cooking a lot, so I want to see how I can support the movement with cooking more.
Liberation food.
Hopefully.
Liberation food.
It's mostly pork belly, but
Oh. You and Shabby can have a battle.
Pork belly battle.
okay. And I don't know.
Anyone else
And then
connected?
you're just the.
Oh, pork
you're
belly.
connected, right?
You like pork belly?
Oh.
I'm a femme.
There we go.
You snap your fingers. I'm really passionate about education and social justice in education spaces, specifically for elementary school. Yeah, that's my biggest thing. And I'm really passionate about serving immigrant communities, specifically education, but just in general. So yeah, in the future, I want to just serve at or work at a school that has big immigrant populations. I don't know what else.
Well, you're only connecting to Anna, right?
Anna, do you have a connection to that?
Oh, they're here.
I said I'm interested in serving immigrant communities.
Oh, yes.
I didn't do that perfect. I didn't do that perfect. You're the last one.
I'm the last person. Okay,
Yeah.
so do I? I can just say
Just say,
anything.
just say a
Same
truth.
thing.
The truth. What has not already been said?
So many things.
Oh, thank you.
Just give us one of the truths. Just give us the truth.
Spit some truth.
You're still in Mercury.
I was to say that too.
Is that Mercury? When our powers
It's
combine.
not I don't know. No, it's okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'll say, I don't know, for me, a big part of being in ND and being part of Anakbayan is trying to hold international revolutionary, international, I can't say right now, international revolutionary spirit, and to link up struggles of Filipino people with struggles of Latinx people and Nicaraguan people, and those are very inseparable for me. So that's why I'm here and I do this. That makes no sense. I don't know when's a good time for a food break, but I'm just letting it out.
The folks hungry now?
I'll get us some more. If we get them.
I think maybe in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Hey.
All right, so let's just go over briefly the
Anna, come back.
objectives of BWO. The objectives are to show the grassroots situation of women, is rooted in the problems of Filipino society, help us understand the historical roots of the oppression and the struggle of Filipino women, and establish the role and the connection of the women's liberation movement to the national democratic struggle of the people. It also should be noted that while we are focusing primarily on Filipino women in this particular ED, that these sort of oppression, right, these forms of oppression, really, it's interesting that it has no sort of boundaries, right? It really applies to just women in general. So before we sort of move on and go over the outline and really get into the meat and potatoes of things, do folks want to add anything to their own personal objectives for the CD?
I think too to like link up how like migrant Filipino women experience this here, and particularly in Jersey City and just like the Northeast region.
Great. Anything else? No? Okay. So the course outline, it's broken up into 3 parts. First is the Filipino women's situation in Philippine society, and then we're gonna go over the history of oppression, and then the roots causes of these oppressions. So what is the situation of women in Philippine society? Well, we're looking at, in order for us to really understand the sectors of women, we have to understand the class analysis that makes up, or the analysis that makes up Philippine society as a whole. And when we're looking at this class analysis is for the entire Philippine society. Just to be clear. It is, it's fancy. So if we're looking at, can anyone tell me what they notice about this particular stratification?
It reminds me of the Tagalog, but like women are, they're not confined to one class. They're in all the classes. So whether or not they be the 1% or the masses. Yeah.
Anything else?
Can't even see the green on this one.
Green. Oh.
It's like literally.
Because it's only one person.
Yeah.
So, one thing to sort of note is that there's a huge disproportionate sort of, I mean, we all know this, right? That whole pyramid that we're really trying to flip, right? And so this is really representative of the majority of the women are amongst like the peasants and the workers and petty bees, and a little bit from the national bourgeoisies. Does anyone have anything else to add to this particular analysis?
Roger has taken PSR. So it's okay, Brian. But it's clear in terms of the differences between each of the classes. Like, do you know the distinction between the comprador bourgeoisie class and the national bourgeoisie class?
You want to?
Oh, so the national bourgeoisie is like, they still have something to gain, but their livelihood is at risk when the comprador bourgeoisie is in power, because that the one group that makes up the 1% are like multinational companies and those that own them, and because of the growing power of them, the national bourgeoisie like almost doesn't exist right now.
And then I think I remember national bourgeoisie are usually like small business owners.
Yeah.
So like that's why they're at risk, is because there's always someone bigger that like buy them out. Or,
Yeah.
How do you compete with that?
It's like national, like they mentioned, like national business. So like people who make barongs, people who make certain types of coconut oil. There isn't like an overseas demand, right? So, and even though this is the Philippine class analysis, this is also reflective of many Latin American countries, a lot in other Asian countries, other African countries. I mean, African countries, class analysis is different, but it's similar to that.
Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay, so then now we're gonna go into the different classes or different women's sectors of the Philippines.
All right. So diving into what is currently now at the bottom of the pyramid, which is peasant women. So when we think back to that pyramid, 75% of the population, which is a majority, which is like about 75 million people in the Philippines, are part of this class, and half of them are women. So what are their conditions? So women in the peasant class are all in the agricultural world, so they are part of a lot of the production of farming, so clearing, cleaning, seeding, planting, harvesting. These are all things that are like manual and require them
to work very hard during the day, rise early, and be out. Some issues that a peasant woman faces are rooted in a couple of different things, and one of them is landlessness. So, and that meaning there is consistent land grabbing of peasant land, and then because of continued policies in the Philippines and increased multinational or international corporate interests in Philippine land, there's continued liberalization of some of the agricultural industries, which allow multinational corporations to come in and harvest or take over, stealing more and more land. Oftentimes what happens as well is that some of the land is converted to for new industries. So for like tourism, for example, Dole, when it came into Mindanao, had to change the entire landscape of certain places so that it could grow trees when really it was meant to grow rice. So that's kind of some of the things. And then something that we're going to delve into and talk a lot about is the feudal patriarchal system. And so we know from PSR, or what you might have heard, are the three basic problems of the Philippines. And one of them is that the Philippines is in a semi-feudal state, meaning there is this, because 75 million people live basically off the land and have a relationship to a landlord, it's set up society in a way where there is basically, like these mini pyramids of power. And so this is especially apparent in the countryside, where these systems exist because there's a landlord and they actually have all control. So what does this look like for women, for peasant women? Well, you saw in the first slide that peasant women are out in the fields and they're doing work, but their labor isn't actually considered a kind of a valuable labor. Women are really seen as being part of the family, raising family, and their contributions to work, their contributions to the farm or whatever, aren't really seen as contributions, because they are really just thought of through this lens as like housewives and people who are in charge of the house. They are oftentimes paid less than seasonal workers. So because a lot of folks don't actually own their own land and they have to work other people's land, they are less likely to be hired and less likely to be paid in equal, because of, they're not seen as actually being able to contribute equal labor as men, aren't going to be paid as much as men. And they are used to pay debts. So sometimes if there's your family is impoverished and you're in debt and you are trying to run your farm and you have to get this thing called a treasure, which basically, it shells the rice from the pali, this casing of the rice to make it actually edible. But that costs a lot of money and you probably don't have it. So, there are certain things that are very expensive to run a farm. And so sometimes women are used as commodities to pay for certain debts or pay for certain things to make sure that the farm continues to grow. And then, the computer's blocking. Sorry. And unfortunately, this also has to do with a practice that can be commonplace with landowners as well, which is if a peasant woman, a peasant family lives on a farm or lives on the landlord not only has domain over the land, but also the people who live on the land. And so when it comes to women and women's bodies, unfortunately, that means that the landowner also can take payment in a particular way from these women and their daughters. And so sometimes, I think you mentioned this a couple of times in the past, but there's this idea that the landowner's son can become de-virginized by the peasant women before they get married as a practice. And that's something that's okay and fine.
Another issue of peasant women is the increased militarization of the countryside. We see militarization because of what I was saying, the continued pivot to the Philippines for multinational industries. And so when the military are in the countryside, there are higher instances of violence, and especially against women, and especially because rape and sexual harassment are forms of torture and forms to punish and keep people relegated to be quiet when the military is around, to kind of control people. And so women become sort of another commodity of these larger groups to show power and dominion over a particular region or area. Oh, this is strange. And so, so the 75 million people who are peasants, I would say about maybe less than 5% of them own land, which means a majority of those people live on less than $2 a day, and that's very difficult. And because of this extreme amount of poverty, not being able to eat even the food that you're like creating and growing for other people, or watching your rice being taken away to pay these debts that don't make any sense. A lot of women especially are forced to leave and look for work, in which we see mass exodus of people from the provinces to places like Manila to find income. And they'll try to find income in urban areas like household work, factory work, and oftentimes are the easiest to exploit and become illegally recruited for certain things. And these are examples of 3 different instances in which sometimes women are forced to sell their bodies to make ends meet, and these are what it's called. And so ligas in the farmlands means to be like in exchange for rice.
Mm-hmm.
In the plantations, isang molde, isang putok, which is sack material.
Exchange for raw.
Exchange for raw materials.
Like sugar.
And then fishing villages, akyat barco, which is basically happening on the boats.
Yeah. And it literally translates into climb boats.
What is it?
Climb boats.
Climb boats.
Like prostitution.
Yeah. And in a lot of in the first 2, you can see like it's not even for money. It's like for food, for like basic commodities. That women are needing to resort to this kind of thing.
I just want to add one thing about this. Like, so for example, in like a concrete example of this is an example of this after Typhoon Haiyan, Sumanda, and the devastation of that typhoon that happened in, I mean, it hit several places in the Philippines, but of course the hardest hit region was the Eastern Visayas. So the Eastern Visayas is a largely agricultural community and also fishing community. So given the devastation in that area, the prostitution, what women have had to do in order to just survive, right? So when you know what happened after the typhoon, the fishing areas have become no dwelling zones, right? So not only no build, so there were people like, we're not trying to build, we just want to fish, right? We're fisher folk. And they're like, well, you can't even be here. So they changed it to no dwelling zones. And so if you're taking away the principal livelihood of all of these people, which is agricultural, with all the coconut trees have fallen, and then the fact that they can't even fish, and they can't even be on the coast because all of those coastline areas that were devastated by the typhoon are now being reserved for resorts, for tourism development, for multinational corporations, again, and what the people have had to do, and especially the women, because the older women who are able to move, just like Cole mentioned, who are able to move to other urban areas to find work, they've done that. But because people can't eat, they've had to resort to even, like, so then it means everyone has to work. So if you have an 8-year-old daughter, and she's the only one because of her age, obviously cannot travel to Manila or to, what happens is the prostitution has not only become more rampant, but has gotten younger and has also become more exploitative, obviously, you know. So when you think of those conditions and that particular impact on women, especially even in light of a disaster like that.
And I think that's also like not something that we have to talk about right now, but maybe in your questions later, is like the conditions here versus in the Philippines versus here, and like this idea of choice, right? So like needing to sell your body in the Philippines in these conditions is similar to needing to leave the Philippines in order to make to like support your family, right? And is that a choice? That's forced migration. This is forced prostitution. This is not really a choice. Right. Next sector. Any questions so far?
Oh. So is it also extensive like the case with Mary Jane Veloso, like women being targeted as drug mules?
Drug mules?
Yeah, like
Oh yeah. I mean, because women are like most likely to be be exploited that way. I don't think that there's better, but an increased amount of people who are being drug trafficked or trafficking drugs for other people, but I think that they are most likely to be used for drug trafficking.
Because
But
they're
there's
traveling
not-
the most. Like they're the ones traveling anyway.
Most of the people who leave the Philippines are women. So just mathematically, like it's most likely going to be who's drug trafficking for another agency or a group of people. And less likely to be supported in the process after. So if they're caught or they die, they're less likely to be helped. Question?
No.
Just take a breath.
Breathe, Anna.
All right, so it's me again. Oops. So next sector. So back to
Look
getting
at
back
the shirt,
to
Oh, sower.
the sower. The pyramid again. So the next level is the workers, and that's about 14 to 15% of the population. And when we're thinking workers, we're not thinking of workers in the way that it's here in the United States. We're thinking about workers whose conditions look similar to this. And we're going to look at it specifically in the lens of women, because there are specific, I mean, there are a lot of things that are happening to workers in the Philippines, but there are some specific instances that happen to women especially, because women are more likely, like we have been saying, to be exploited. So the conditions of women workers in the Philippines, a lot of them have work in retail businesses, but especially in export processing zones. Do folks know what those are? Export processing zones.
Sounds familiar, but
Yeah.
can you tell us more?
Of course. Export processing zones are these like crazy little areas that are special and that they've been basically zoned out of being regulated by normal labor policies.
This is like a free trade zone.
Yeah, kind of.
Not that free though.
Like not free, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there's special rules that happen in export processing zones, aka no rules, because there are apparently a million rules for labor. Anyway, but yeah, so a lot of things that happen in export processing zones, like people make electronics or they put together fine things, and they're allowed to be basically exploited in terms of labor, in terms of safety. Anything that could protect a worker is gone in an export processing zone, and it's mostly multinational corporations, or it's corporations from different countries who can ship their products to this zone, have it made, and then it's shipped out. A common example of like what it's like is that you could build a TV or with products or with stuff from like Japan, but you can't afford to buy that TV, and that TV will be sold to you once you leave the zone, because that TV is just coming there to be made and shipped out, and it costs a lot of money.
It's like a proxy.
Yeah. for the time. Also, even if they did have some supplies for the job, they'll take it out of their paycheck.
If it goes missing. A lot of women are in service industry. It's a big industry in the Philippines, and this is like when you go to the Philippines, you like go to the mall, and there's somebody in a nice little suit, and they like help you find your shoes. And for in an example of how women are particularly affected by the service industry is that oftentimes a woman, like there's an age limit. So like if you work in a mall, you can't be older than 25 because now you're old.
Yeah.
Or you have to be single. You can't be married. You can't have children. And a lot of them also work in food. You have to be light skinned.
Yeah.
What are the main areas where the export processing zones are located? Or is it just like spread out everywhere?
I feel like it's mostly in Luzon, right?
Yeah.
Major ports in Luzon.
Anywhere you can get it out faster.
Like cities, a lot of cities have areas where municipalities will have areas for export processing zones, but also some provinces. So like Bataan has a export processing zone. So it depends on what needs to be made, right? On what the needs of the multinational. So, but it's usually in areas like Cole mentioned, like by ports, easy access.
All right, so some issues that particularly affect women workers. High unemployment rates. So like for the one thing that I just said was like you can't work here if you're over 25, which causes a lot of barriers for women to find employment in general. They experience very low wages because they're most likely to be paid lower than men because their value and their labor is not seen as important. There's rampant discrimination, so it's legal for them to be asked to have a pregnancy test. They are not going to get promoted. This idea of you are no longer of value to us in the service industry if you're married or you have children. Women often do not get benefits or any kind of social services. They are most likely to become contractual workers, which I don't know if any of you have heard about what's going on with contractualization. It's making its way to the United States, yay! But oftentimes, being a contractual worker means that you don't have access to benefits. Your job security is very low. Your payment is low. It kind of pits you against other workers because you're trying to get as much work as you can. It's only a set amount of time. You can be fired at any time. And it's just not it's not a worker a pro worker policy, and it's being promoted by the Philippine government and is pretty much, I think there's this in Tanduay, if you all heard about what's going on with Tanduay, 85% of the workers who make this run are contractual laborers, and a ton of them were just fired and laid off. And they had a strike for months and months and months, and were able to reverse that, which was really great. But that is just one example of many, many, many others in which workers are just treated at the lowest rung of value in a corporation when they're actually the ones who make these things run. And women are at the very bottom of that rung. And then especially sexual harassment. So this idea of lay down or be laid off. Because if you come from conditions that are empowered, if you're a peasant woman who's migrated to the city looking for work, and you happen to be the lucky one who gets a job, and you have just this because of semi-feudal patriarchy, because somebody has power and control over you and wants a particular thing from you, there's not a lot that you can say or do if you need this job and you're being sexually harassed for a woman. But also to throw this in there, a very
interesting thing that happens in the Philippines, and one of the reasons why Lesbond, the Lesbians for National Democracy organization, started, was that some companies prefer to hire lesbians because they're less likely to have children and they work like men and who can be paid less than men.
Can't get married.
And they can't get married.
But it's also interesting, right? This
Also
idea
get
of work
pregnant.
like men. Like, what does that? What
Yeah.
what does that mean?
So I'll throw that wrench in there. Some types of women workers, I mentioned some of these. Contractual, can be hired for a few months at a time. Seasonal, we talked a little bit about this, like a peasant women, but can be hired for specific times, holidays, industries. And then this idea of semi-worker, which is special services. You know, you might have a gig where you work at a home for 3 days a week, but it's not like on the books, right? All right, moving into urban poor.
So, urban poor women. So, many of the women are just many Filipinos end up sort of migrating to urban cities in search for better job opportunities. And so they're met with major sort of disappointment when they get into the city, right? Cities are oftentimes overpopulated. There isn't a lot of jobs as they had initially assumed, right? There's actually a high rate of underemployment in the cities. And a lot of them just kind of on a whim leave the countryside to go to the city, not having any sort of real resources or support systems. And they end up usually sort of building up like a makeshift home for themselves, right? And they're forced to live in these things called squatters, which are actually pretty prevalent in the city, in the Phils. And we know what squatters are, right? Like,
Shantytown.
yeah. So the issues of urban poor women are extreme poverty and hunger. Squatter communities face threats of home demolition, lack of basic infrastructure and clean water and sanitation, constant increase in price of basic commodities, and no opportunities for employment. And while we say that these are the issues of urban poor women, these are the issues of all urban poor. And are we missing anything else? I know that that's pretty much it for the urban poor women, right? Yeah. And if we can go to the next slide, please.
Something very quick about urban poor, since you did it in urban poor.
Oh yeah, you did.
Oh yeah.
Which one?
Just Tondo. Yeah, really quickly, I was in Tondo. I don't know if you've heard of like the Smoky Mountain before, but it's like giant trash pile that people like go
Or like
through.
Smoky Mountain. People do that.
That's what I just
Oh, you did.
where they scavenge for a living to find whatever like materials they can use. And so a lot of people lived in Tondo who like scavenged from that kind of area, and it was like one of the hardest things I've ever seen and done. But the conditions there are like unimaginable, and like I think when we see these words like extreme poverty, like when you see what it's actually like, it's worse than extreme. And these are like conditions that exist that people like left the provinces and farmlands to come into. Like they weren't born in these urban poor areas. They like came here or came there to find something and like couldn't find anything and are forced to like go through like the trash of the petty B of our trash to find that like $2 a day that they can get from finding the bottles and stuff. And so women are often the leaders of these communities
they're often the ones who are like organizing and like checking in with people and taking care of each other, because they have that double. There's like this double layer or kind of double work that women do, where they're taking care of their families, they're taking care of each other, and taking care of the communities. And so when I was there with Gabrielle and Tondo, and they were so nice because they were the ones who were like, there's an open coal pit that is covering our children in a layer of coal every morning, and we are coughing up like black soot. And this is not fair because we're already in these conditions and I already can't like do so many things, and we're gonna organize to close this open coal pit, and they did. So that was a report. Do it intake. Do it. Expo.
Indigenous women are in the countryside, and they can be found all over the country, from areas in the Cordilleras and also in Mindanao. And I'm sure most folks have heard of all the issues that are happening with the Lumad in Mindanao, especially after September, where the 3 leaders were killed. And there's current campaigns that many of our MOs are part of. I know that Anakbayan is really concentrated on Save Our Schools. And the Lumad is, the different types of indigenous peoples. And I think the ones that I learned of were like 5 types of tribes. And the community that I saw were mostly noble. The issues of indigenous women are that they're displaced from their ancestral land by the ruling class and foreign domestic corporations, whether it be like a mining company that would rather remove the indigenous people from their land so that they can take all the rich resources that they live on. If not that, then they can take like all the farming stuff that they've already had going on there. Discrimination, that was definitely something I learned firsthand from meeting them, was that a lot of the Lumad would say if we looked for work in the city, that we would be discriminated because we were too dark, or like once they found out that we lived or where we came from, they weren't even considered for hiring. Also because like their language is very different from what would be spoken in the city. Indigenous women are used as tourist attractions, so I know like what I see very prevalent is like the Igorot attire and everything that's really like overused, like for tourists to use their own cultures. Indigenous women face that beliefs and practices that limit participation of women in the tribe and society. And that basically means that even within their tribe, they have somewhat feudal patriarchy issues as well. Indigenous women also are forced into a cash economy as well. Another sector is the women, youth, and students. So 6 out of 10 Filipinos, I think it's probably even more than that now, are usually median age 24 or below, and half of them are women. They do move. Yeah. The issues of women, youth, and students are that their commercialization of education. So, like marketing that education, especially the lengthening of 2 more years for usually it'd be K through 10, typically in traditional school, but now they're extending another 2 years so that the age of students would be marketable to the prime age so they can get jobs abroad. There's also increase in tuition fees. So I know Anakbayan, one of your campaigns to really highlight that education is a human right. So, not having access because it's just too expensive to go to school. There's also gender discrimination. So girls in school are not treated the same as boys in school, or even their professors that are women versus the professors that are men in school. Also, women, youth, and students are going to more than likely be exposed to violence against women. So just like Cole had said, lay off, lay down. It's going to be the same thing in school environments. If you want to pass this class, you can sleep with me or you'll fail. So that's what cuarto or cuatro. What does that mean?
Cuatro is 4 is a failure.
Oh, okay. So fail or go to my bed or room. Yeah. Oh, prostitution.
Prostitution.
Oh, that's how you'll pay for your high tuition.
Yeah, I would say like, and specifically, so like increase in tuition fees and how that specifically affects women, and like to connecting that to the prostitution and the gender-based discrimination, and how like those things are, like they don't happen in isolation. And so when fees are increased for students, and they're increased especially for like women and young women, that creates conditions for women that exposes them to higher instances of violence or like for sexual harassment or anything like that. It makes them more susceptible to or more able to be exploited because of things like that. So like an increase on tuition fees is a direct attack on young women.
There was a case of a UP student a few years ago. I think her name is Crystal, and she committed suicide because she couldn't afford her family couldn't afford to pay the next semester. So instead of like having to drop out or, she committed suicide. So this is like, as the impact on youth and students, and then particularly like what female youth and students are facing.
Any questions so far with regards to the sectors? Should we finish off the sectors and then break off to lunch and then talk about the sections? Yeah. Okay, so the next sector we're going to be talking about is the petty bourgeoisie women's sector.
When I first started here.
I was like, Borges? Don't speak the French.
That's what they say, Betty Borges.
So these are professionals, intellectual students, small business owners, teachers, and health workers. The issues that petty B women face are low wages, lack of job security due to privatization, discrimination in promotions, sexual harassment and or abuse, and high unemployment rates in the country. Do you want to add on to that?
I think to highlight the privatization, are folks familiar with that? That because they're treating, say, like a hospital like a business, then it's harder to, and also because they're contracted too.
And lots of social services, and I mean globally, but especially in the Philippines, are undergoing privatization. So when you're talking about healthcare, education, all these services that you think of that should be for all, right? And so, and especially like when we consider plans like the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, those kinds of agreements, like everything that we're presenting about the classes is like will be way worse. Way worse. And on top of the fact that the TPPA would also allow for private interests to sue states if they feel that their rights as a corporation are being infringed upon. So if the state decides to, combat privatization and say, I would like my healthcare to continue to be for all, like my education to continue to be for all. And if some corporation comes in and is like, oh, you're infringing on my ability to do business in here, then I can sue you. So, so that's also another aspect that would like really cement the worsening of these situations.
The next. The next national bourgeoisie women, small capitalists and business owners in the countryside and in the city, small businesses, just like Janine was talking or Janine was saying, like coconut oil, things like that, like the or sort of home accessories, like all the
Like
other
our souvenirs. And things.
Yeah. So that are very sort of local, right? Like these sort of local businesses. The issues that they face are, we mentioned this earlier before, was the bankruptcy due to heavy competition of imported products, and also facing discrimination and abuse as women in the industry. So when we're looking specifically at petty B and nat B, sort of that sort of population, right? That already is very male centric, right? Like these are positions that often, more often than not in history, have always been just male. Like these are for men, like these are men jobs. So the idea of women actually being in these sort of industries or in these sort of classes is still a fairly new thing. So they're not only are they sort of facing the issues that those particular industries face just in general, it's impacted or doubly impacted by their gender, right, as women. So if you're, if a man, petty B, is facing sort of, like competition, or nat B is facing competition from like male business owners facing competition from a company in Japan, right? A woman business owner will more than likely have been just completely bankrupt at that point, right? So is really sort of looking at, as we look at sort of, or think about these sectors and these issues that these women are facing, the oppression is tenfold, right? And we'll get into that after we eat. But I think that's the end of the sectors, right? Or the classes, yeah. And then we'll just go into, no, there's still migrants.
Oh, yeah.
There's still the migrants.
That's fine, let's do it.
To the migrants?
Let's do the first classes.
Okay.
Okay. Let's finish it up.
Stays all in.
That's true. True. Okay, next slide. Deep poverty, 69 million Filipinos which is 80% of the population survive on less than $2 a day. 46 million. Obviously, these numbers are a lot higher
They need to
now.
go higher, yeah.
They're a lot higher
Probably
now.
75.
46 million go hungry every day, and 11.6 million have no jobs. This is back in 2006. And this sort of leads us into, these sort of conditions leads us into the next sector, which is our migrant women sector, which is really, it exists because of forced migrations, right? Because of the lack of jobs. People from the Phils end up leaving, and a majority of them are women. And 11% of the entire Filipino population is overseas. Mm-hmm. We have one of the largest diasporas in the world, right? Namely, primarily because our country sort of looks at just its people as commodities. And we're the highest revenue, like where people are what gives the Philippines most of its money. So where do all these women or these people sort of migrate? All the Filipinos migrate. A majority of them come to the U.S. And Saudi Arabia, which is pretty interesting, but it is also developing, right? Like at the time, it was one of the sort of the biggest sort of developing countries. And then the United, what is it? Arab Emirates.
We have a GAB there.
That's how many people have migrated.
Yeah.
We have a GAB.
So a majority of them are actually here in the United States. And then, we're everywhere else.
Where is Saipan? Is that Japan?
No.
Island, okay. Oh, like Guam.
In Saipan, half of the population is
Whoa.
Filipinos.
It's interesting. So Hong Kong, people migrate to Hong Kong. Majority of people who migrate there are women, if not all of them who migrate there, because Hong Kong has a domestic worker industry. Because of its booming economy. A lot of people can't stay at home, and so a lot of Filipinas work there in the home, cleaning, and with like the older generations, which but they're relegated to like a different like level in society. Like they're not actually workers. They don't get like overtime. They don't have job security.
They don't have breaks.
They don't have breaks. They are forced to live in with the later. Yeah, so on Sundays when they have their day off, maybe they sit in the streets because they have no home. They have no room. They don't like have a place to be. So they sit in the streets and they have their time. It's really organized, but like the conditions specific to women we're looking at where they're like traveling to and where they're going to these places and they're relegated to certain parts of society. They can't participate in these like places as like normal workers or whatever. In Saudi Arabia, particularly, a lot of construction work, but also domestic work. But there are a lot of cases that are coming from Saudi Arabia where there's violence against women or women are being imprisoned or executed, and there's no support like from the overseas Philippine agencies. The POEA, who are supposed to take care of the migrants, who the migrants actually pay in order to go.
What does POEA stand for again?
Philippines Overseas Employment Agency. So you have to pay. You have to pay like thousands and thousands of pesos to like even be able to apply to like migrate somewhere. And when people are executed in places like Saudi Arabia or the U.S., it costs, the families have to pay to get the body back. Or like the families have to do so much when it's really the responsibility of the POEA to advocate for the migrant workers. So like, why are you paying an agency to support you when it's not actually happening?
I think. Oh no, sorry. No, looking at this list, like a lot of, especially the impact on women, in terms of caregiving, in terms of domestic work, is very prevalent in a lot of these countries. And in addition to what Paul highlighted about Hong Kong, like Canada itself also has a very, very restrictive, exploitative domestic worker policy in which women cannot even, if you come in as there's a specific visa for domestic workers and it doesn't even allow you can't even educate yourself, right? Because your visa is to be a domestic worker. So if you try and go to school on your off time, or if you try to live outside, you don't live with your employer, like it has all these restrictions. You must live with your employer has the authority to hold your documents, has control over your comings and goings, so, and you can't even, you were there to be a domestic worker. Like, that's it. Like, don't try to be a Canadian citizen. Don't try to find another job, things like that. And even in like Israel, like what has happened in Israel, which there's been a stay on this law, but that still didn't prevent, they changed the law. Israel changed the law to mandate that both of your parents had to be Israeli nationals in order, even if you're born in Israel, you are not an Israeli national. Even if you're born there, you don't have birthright unless both of your parents are Israeli nationals. So when you think of all the children of domestic workers who are either abused by their worker or actually like found, had a partner who is Israeli and they had a child, many of those children were being deported. And then they've just, had to stay on it because there was someone who was voting, an Israeli elected, that was like, my domestic worker. Like, you know, it was a personal story that helped her. Like, you know, she was like, I don't, you know, like, I saw that that's not fair, you know, so it resulted from that. So, I mean, you know, so when you think of all of these things and just how, like, you know, the word for a caregiver in Israel is Filipinit, right? The word for a caregiver, the word for a maid in Greece is Filipinesa. Oh no, in Spain it's Filipinesa. So it's like, so when you think of it, it's like, this is an impact not only on overseas workers, but how women are overrepresented, right? How women are expected to carry the brunt of these conditions in the Philippines, like in terms of 3 basic problems and how it manifests in terms of the lives of Filipinas, you know. And just one other quick thing I'll say about the last 2 times I've gone on Expo, from last year and the year before. Flying back, I've flown EVA Air, right? So, and going there, you know, so when I come back, every time I've come back, so this time and the last time, I can see on the plane, like, Filipinas, right? So last time, Tina and I flew EVA Air last year, and I look around and I'm like, okay, I see like a lot of Filipinos, they're wearing like heavy coats, and I was like, I think these are overseas Filipino workers, you know, like first time OFWs. And then as soon as you get out, they are like corralled by some employer, I don't know who, that's like line up, blah, 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 kind of treats them like cattle, and then puts tags on them, and then, you know, it's as if you're herding cattle, like in herding OFWs. And then when I flew back, this time the same thing happened. Like I looked and I was like, oh, it's that flight again. It's that same flight. And I came out and the person with the blue vest came and
got a sign like,
yeah, like here, or, you know, OFWs, you know, so this is like, it's a business. You know, we become really, women and overseas Filipino workers are commodities as a way to like keep the economy afloat in light of, you know, the fact that 75 million people have nothing, you know. Sorry.
So that was the all that you were saying was the next slide. Show the issues that migrant Filipino women face. So they are sort of forced into these positions of like nurses, caregivers, entertainers, domestic workers, small wages, withheld wages, basically everything that makes sense. So when we're looking at Filipinos in the U.S., next slide. Yeah. A majority of them go to California.
Who's from California?
Oh, look at
that. And do we want to say anything about the migration patterns of Filipinos in the U.S.?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's going to talk about tonight. So when we think of, so I don't want to put your business out there, but for people, the migration, you know, like if we know the history of how Filipinos were brought to the United States, right? Not dissimilar from how Mexicans were, you know, in terms of braceros, in terms of all type of migrant labor, right? How Chinese were brought in to, you know, build the railroads, you know. So, so the concentration of Filipinos in California, as we know, is to do the agricultural work, right? In terms of the manons, right? Like Arlene has heritage in that the Filipino concentration here in the Northeast is different, right? It's more recent. It's post 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act by Lyndon B. Johnson. So, but in California, the migration was more about only men, you know, single men, also subject to Jim Crow type laws, right? Exclusion, you couldn't, you know, you couldn't whistle at white women, you couldn't even be seen with them, or else you would be lynched and killed, and you know, all of that terror that happened throughout the United States also was part for Filipinos in California at that time, because same thing, if you're a Filipino, you're a Filipino worker. You're not a Filipino to become a U.S. citizen. You're not becoming an American. You're here to pick peaches, asparagus, go to canneries in Alaska, and then you're here to do that seasonal work for American companies. And so, but the near New Jersey concentration, I think we had this, John, you mentioned about like Piscataway, how people are in Piscataway. You know, that's a lot of the characteristics of petty bourgeois migration, right? Petty bourgeois migration in that you're coming as a professional, right? As in 1965 is if you're a healthcare worker, if you're lots of government workers, where you have degrees. And also at the time, post 1965, especially here, there was a major economic crisis. And so Filipinos were put on this list of like, we're gonna prioritize Filipinos because they learn English in school, and so if they come and work in our government sectors, we can pay them less and still save money, but still have the work being done, but save money in light of the fiscal crisis. So that's where you find like hella Filipinos that are working in like schools, and they all came here in like 1970 something, right? So so a lot of that is, so when we look at these patterns, like, and this is why it's important to look at it in not only history but in a collective, systematic kind of way, because it's all tied to labor demands by imperialist countries, right? And the crises that these imperialist countries are facing. That's why, this is on the same spectrum of what resulted in the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement being a thing, right? So this is like predates all of those things. So so that's basically like explains like why these numbers are like that, right? You have people coming to California first for that seasonal work, and then the later migration after. So
thanks, Jay. So the Pinays in the U.S., 55% of Filipinos in the U.S. are female. This is an estimated 2.3 million Pinays in the U.S., not including those that are undocumented. And about 1/3 of working class in the following occupations: productions in factories, lower level sales, healthcare support, food prep and service, office admin and support. Issues of Pinays in the U.S. Similar to other marginalized women and racial minorities, they face domestic violence and sexual abuse, homophobia, lack of childcare, lack of culturally competent social services, racism, identity issues, high dropout rate, high school, college, substance abuse, exploitation and discrimination in the workplace, lack of adequate healthcare, and unemployment and underemployment. Does anyone else want to sort of add to issues, conditions of migrants, right? Like as we're thinking about not just Filipino migrants, but just migrant women in general.
That you see happen.
And that we've possibly missed. No? So issues very unique to Pinays in the U.S. Due to colonial history and neo-colonial subservience in the Philippines to the U.S. There's that colonial mentality and identity issues. High suicide rates among young Pinays, sexual stereotyping and other forms of gender oppression, trafficking, mail-order bride industry and sex work, de-skilling of professional healthcare workers, teachers, and lawyers. Yeah.
folks are clear on de-skilling.
Is that just like they can't practice here because their degree is like from the Philippines? Okay.
Or they're like given, like they're trafficked here to be a teacher, but they actually are clean.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, are folks clear on like the colonial mentality stuff?
Any questions with regards to these? Okay. That concludes our sectors. So the basic sectors of Philippine women are peasants, workers, urban poor, indigenous, youth and students, petty B, national B, and migrants. Due to the difficult and poor conditions of the Philippines, women are leaving the country for better opportunities. And then after we eat, we will explore the root causes of these crappy situations.
I can say other things than crappy.
That makes me laugh every time. I just keep forgetting that's there.
Really want to say it.
I saw
I
it.
wanna
I
say-
said,
I wanna use
I have to say it.
I've facilitated this a million times and that crappy things.
We'll come back after lunch, okay, folks?
Yeah, sorry, that was a lot.
No,
It gets heavier, guys.
Oh, yeah.
It gets heavier.
we do sort of vacations to Bermuda.
Are you back up?
Yep.
Oh no, you're blocking.
We can't have light until after this
Oh my god.
one. Okay, there we go.
Wow,
I
you did it.
did it sort of. I
What?
put my thumb through an apple.
Great.
Fitness ED. Icebreaker.
Apple.
Laura?
It's yeah.
Okay, welcome back, guys. We are refreshed. Refreshed. Sorry. Anyway, okay. Now we're gonna get into the types of oppression Filipino women experience.
Well, before we do that, can you folks really quick say one thing that they've kind of taken away so far or like learned?
Well, I one thing I learned is how our bodies are the sexual aspect of our bodies is a commodity, and that's really like one of the prime focuses of Filipino women in the Philippines, and like when they're exported. That was something I didn't really think about too much in the ND perspective kind of framework. And then the other thing was in regards to like tuition hikes, I didn't know the consequences of those tuition hikes in that way.
I learned about like the sort of like how some modes of work have like age limits and like marital and like even like virginity like limits. Where they can get like just they can lose their job if they're like not a virgin or something.
financing. That was a lot of what hit me too, is like the barriers to employment are like extra for women, especially like urban for women, where women working in factories, and also the export labor export processing zones. I didn't know about those, but just like all the ways like that deregulation and privatization and contractualization is like specifically impacting women in those types of work and services.
I'm still thinking about, I guess like what I understand as survival sex as a means of like, I guess kind of what Laura was talking about, how people have to trade sex or like are forced in these situations where they're trading sex for not even just money, but like goods to live and survive. And like, I'm trying to link that back to like my understanding of survival sex, at least in the US. And yeah, I'm parsing through that right now.
Cool. Thank you all for sharing. Unless you two want to share. And really delve deeper into like what are these different kinds of layers that we've kind of talked about so far. And so when we're thinking about the three basic problems, right? Semi-feudal, semi-colonial, bureaucrat capitalism. These are three root causes of all the basic problems. So we're thinking about the different layers of women, or of oppression against women. These three things play out in particular ways. And so one way that is connected to U.S. imperialism is because the Philippines is nationally oppressed by imperialist powers, specifically to the United States. That creates obviously unequal systems that trickle down to the people. And when half of the people are women, these imperialist ideologies and policies and practices are directly impacting women in specific ways, which we'll talk about. Then there is the class oppression, so the bureaucrat capitalists who are running the Philippines and their specific policies that impact women. And then once we get down to it, the patriarchy that is bred by semi-feudal society conditions and the systemic oppression that happens. And like I said, the oppression of Filipino women is rooted in semi-colonial and semi-feudal character of Philippine society. Who's that guy?
George Bush.
Who's that lady?
Bush.
Gloria.
Macapagal?
Gloria.
Is that a whale? Is that what you Yep. And look at them modeling our nice semi-feudal. Wow. And so we're going to zoom into semi-feudal society and tendencies because these tend to be kind of what we see play out in a couple different ways. So semi-feudal society, like we said, we're thinking about the pyramid, where 75% of the people are peasants. So that creates kind of that unequal balance of power, and that some people like landlords or men or people who are considered to have more value around their labor have more power. And so those people who are not considered valuable or powerful tend to be women, and they are subject to the authority and wishes of the ruling class. And this it happens through ideologies of the church, of religion, of again, the ruling class that makes decisions on basic services of society. It's sometimes a community, and especially in the family. And these things also are easily played out I said this earlier, in the countryside, because the way that it's actually just set up is where the peasants are reliant on the landlords, and the landlord has, you know, dominion and power over everything, the land and the bodies that work the land and live on the land. So the feudal relationship between landlord and farmers, created of women and men. In these feudal conditions, like I said, men are given more autonomy and authority as heads of the household to make decisions. Women are forced to do the double work of being in the household, taking care of the house, but also contributing to the agro-production of society. And in these conditions are what sets up women to be doubly oppressed or marginalized in conditions, so that, you know, women are relegated to a small or to a certain part of society, and because they are relegated to this particular place, they're most likely to be exploited or most likely to be seen as commodities in the feudal system. How's it play out in societies?
The chain that keeps women in the household directly affects her participation in the economy. So her contribution to production is considered as secondary or just an extra force. So as we had saw earlier, women who are, you know, taking care of the family and doing household things do also contribute to the workforce in agriculture, but that's not even counted for. It's not even seen as any type of contribution at all. And that's why the underlining focus is that it's considered secondary and just an extra force. And even in urban areas, women are often confined to work that is seen as an extension of her role in the house. So that being either, you know, serving as a waitress, seamstress, assembly line worker, teacher, nurse, secretary. And so one of the ways we can look at oppression happening is within the home and within the family. So, you know, women often don't have a voice in decision making because it is their husbands or other men that are making these decisions. They're considered private property of the husband and son or their male counterparts. And battering and marital rape are considered private matters. So it just happens. And the commodification of women, which we've already spoken a lot about bodies. So really, you know, just to highlight, you know, because the Philippines is under, you know, the puppet of the United States, when U.S. imperialists come to the Philippines, it's the women's situation that becomes even worse. So, you know, militarization does not at all help the case of Filipino women, because then when there's more military, then even rape and you know, service women being suspected.
And so we saw this with, you know, the instances of violence that had happened to women because of the military, U.S. military presence. So Jennifer Mate, and then in 2009, Lance Corporal Daniel Smith being cool, and how that exists, and the rhetoric of U.S. troops being told like, "Oh, here are free condoms," like, you can take your leave in Subic Bay or do your thing, and that being at the expense of women, and that, and the commodification of women's bodies being, and them and women being accessible to these men because of the plunder of the Philippine land, because of the conditions that exist.
And what else is sacrificed too is that, say if these women get pregnant, it'll be really hard for them to have access to health care. I mean, what do they do then? You know, that same issue of that there's no support around that at all.
And when you look at like the examples of like the concrete conditions of commodification, so the fact that when U.S. troops are on Philippine soil, the U.S. military distributes free condoms to their troops when they're in the Philippines. Now, when you think of what Filipinas in their own homes are able to access or not access in relation to being able to divorce, being able to even hold them accountable if they're raped or murdered in the case of Jennifer Lale, what happened to Joseph Scott Pemberton, and also, you know, and the fact that if they are pregnant, abortion is illegal.
Yeah.
So, and then even before you get to abortion, contraception is, in some municipalities, mayors have said you need a prescription to have a condom, to get access to contraception or to get access to a condom. So, you know, when you think of like the commodification in the Philippine context is like beyond commodification, you know, it's really like, you know, and GAB has said things like, you know, GAB USA is like the Philippines is not the playground, because that's exactly how women are seen. We're totally seen as objects, as toys for the US military. And then women themselves are actually not even able, and their own homes, able to protect themselves, you know, because, and also because of the state. The state is actually creating barriers for Filipinas to protect themselves, but are opening there are no barriers to the US military, right? And especially, again, with the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, like, you need a law enforcement military arm in order to protect those economic interests. That always goes hand in hand. You know, economic interests don't, you know, that those types of treaties, they know people will resist and fight back. And that's why they do these things, right? That's why they increase military and also have that kind of treaty in place prior to some sort of, you know, again, another unequal economic agreement.
And thinking about how U.S. Militarization is just so connected globally, especially even here. So Jana was saying, like, these women they're not even protected in their own homes. When you think about these military troops are training, the U.S. military is training the Philippine military. The NYPD trains in the Philippines, and
the BART police who killed Oscar Grant trained in the Philippines.
Yeah, and there are 7-year-old girls like Ileana Jones,
So young.
who's a young Black girl who's not able to sleep without being shot and killed by police. It's like very like crazy similar imperialist ideology over people, or militarization over people. That's not just specific to the Philippines, but is an instrument of control and of power, and that is made possible in the Philippines by U.S. imperialism.
Is it also true, I heard, that like if women like have a child like of a military like officer, like that their child is not able to gain like U.S. citizenship, or like that there's like usually like that if your parent is like a U.S. citizen, there's like some pact for that, but there's like a specific rule about this. I don't know, like I've heard that, but I'm not sure. It's like,
Yeah,
you know.
if they're born in the Philippines, they're not, even if you're born, you would have to be, you have to be born in the US, and then what they do is very like, oh, well, of course, we'll bring you, we'll petition you. So, they do that, right? And of course, like a serviceman, even if it's someone that they're actually have a relationship. But they're definitely not considered, they're not considered citizens of the United States automatically by being born. Yeah.
I just heard there's like an extra like because like in other places like that process is like easier to do, but like for specifically like in the Philippines with military personnel, like because it's so common that it's made like even more difficult for those children to attain like citizenship or visa to be able to.
I think the barriers are they're on the US side, but also on the Philippine side, so, and I think it's by virtue of like the agreements for the visiting forces agreement, et cetera, like they're passed in the idea of like a mutual benefit, but just like all of the, the worker laws that are passed, it's like it's just you as a worker. So, so even if there is a relationship between a Philippine national and a U.S. troop, what happens is that the context for their presence doesn't factor that in, right? It only factors in like you're here for an exercise, or you're here for R&R, you're here as part of this base, and if this is something that happened, it goes through the same, like the same bureaucracy that would exist in Philippine you know, like for all the reasons why it's easier to get a visa if you're extending, you would know this, like if you're extending, you can, it's easier to get a visa here to extend in the Philippines than to actually be in the Philippines and get a visa there and extend, you know, so all of that extends to everything in terms of if you have a parent that is a US national and a military, you know, so the barriers just exist in terms of
I think there's like a term for specifically Asian folks who were born like over like outside of the US to US service people. It's called like Eurasian.
or Amerasian.
Amerasian. So yeah, Amerasian. And there's like many people since World War II that I can't go through that process and they're there.
Patriarchal beliefs were spread along with the bourgeoisie view of women.
Do I get that right? Like how women's bodies are being portrayed.
Yeah, like being a virgin is in the top left. Domestic abuse or like do whatever your husband tells you is on the top right. Being attractive and sexy, like your body is sex sells pretty much. And then let's see what the bottom left.
Yeah.
Oh, like okay, so those kind of occupations.
And this is being controlled by like bourgeoisie thought because they're the ones who. There's like one guy who like owns all of them.
Women's labor and bodies can be sold as commodities. It's just what we were saying, sex trafficking. Women are freed from the home only to be used as the country's cheap labor force and are also the first to be fired during an economic crisis. So once again, it's like their contribution to the work field is cheapened. It's not equal to what men contribute in the workforce, and they're the first in line to not have job stability. And are used to sell commercial products like this alcohol product. This is a really old one. And a woman's value, this is really important, a woman's value is still based on how men view her. So really, that's how someone else perceives you is your value.
So how was the low depiction of women spread in Filipino society? Tools of the feudal bourgeois beliefs on women, the primary one being church and religion. The second one sort of being reiterated through the family and school, as well as mass media. Feudal patriarchal beliefs spread by the church. These beliefs are women are naturally beneath men.
Subservient.
Right. The home is the natural place for women. A woman is a temptation, and to pay for her sins, women should always be devoted to men and the church, meek, enduring, and should always trust everything to God's will. Mm-hmm. So this also sort of brings us back to like when our work or women's work in the house, you know, seeing as we are natural caregivers, right, that we're obligated to do that. Those are things that like, of course we're the ones that are gonna make sure that everyone is fed, everyone is taken care of. And things around the house are just sort of like, if those are not done, then there is no reason for us to exist. Right? So looking at us sort of as secondary or what have you, like those, we don't get credit for having to do dual work, right? These are sort of that sort of automatic assumption that women are to be caregivers and they are beneath men are very sort of ingrained in our religion. And in this sort of very like feudal patriarchal belief emphasized by the church and the Bible and a role as the two kinds of women, right? Which is, does anyone know? I'm sure.
Oh.
Which ones are they? Based on the Bible. You guys have never heard?
Yeah.
Well, I select.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, the Virgin Mary and Mary Magdalene, right? Like that's it. Like women we have these two sort of personalities of we're either the virgin, right? Or we are the whores. So these and there's nothing in between, right? And both of these two kinds of women are very much exploited by these systems.
Yeah, wasn't she friends with Jesus though?
She was.
She was.
Probably.
But she was viewed as a temptress.
Yeah.
What is like kind of like GAB's approach, well like both here, but like especially in the Philippines, to like bringing to light like how the church operates in these ways, like so I'm just wondering like what are like some of the strategies that GAB uses, or like how do you like get into the church without like, because the church has so much power.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, because I'm sure you can't like be as direct.
Like abortion, woo.
Okay. So, okay, in terms of GAB, so there is actually a lot of church members in GAB, and so a lot of sisters. There are lots of progressive sisters. If you know Mother Mary John, she's one of the leading organizers in the People Power movement, and she is also one of the people who founded Gabriella. So, in terms of, I mean, just you know, as we know that the conditions, even in the Philippines, right, among the 7,107 islands, there are different approaches, right? So it's organizing not only about church, but for example, if you're in a place like Bataan that, you know, St. John's VFA, in a place that was practically burned after that their village was salvaged was when American troops came. You can't exactly go there and say John VFA, right?
Yeah.
So, because those people are gonna be like, like, no, actually US troops were the reason why why we have homes now and why, you know, etc. So in the church, it really is about service, right? Like, because it's not really saying like, okay, yes, be pro-abortion, or legalize abortion or legalize divorce, but all of the symptoms that lead to that, right? Or all of the fact that, you know, women want divorce or need divorce because they are being abused in the home by their partners, and that's important, you know, or the fact that abortions need to be legalized because women are hurting themselves as rape victims, right? So in the church, of course, the church also is anti, you know, I mean, and if you have progressive church leaders, of course, are supporting that. So the organizing is mainly about those issues, and those are also symptoms of feudal patriarchy. And then just also about VFA, for example, it'll be organizing even in all of those sectors where the anti-imperialist line might not be the best line, the first primary that you should take. But then that's when you have to get more to traditional organizing, right? Because everyone will want people to be protected, right? No one wants people to starve, no one wants people to have nothing, no one wants people beaten or killed. So, you know, so whereas you'll have a place that's pretty conservative in terms of the US military, have a different view of the US military, you know, you organize around traditional women's issues. Right? Like, oh, are you are you a survivor? I mean, you don't ask if they're survivors, but you'll find that people are survivors. You'll find that people, as women, just like in the church sector, they start organizing around those issues in terms of what it means to actually serve versus crossing that line and saying, and we pro-abortion.
Right. And man, when you work like very closely with church, with St. Francis.
Oh yeah, I mean, what's really great about building with churches because also that we're able to, raise, be in spaces of church, but still, have a line as ND, but also if you're familiar with NAFCON, it's also a broader Filipino base. So we are able to have a wide spectrum of allies within the church.
Yeah. I think also recognizing that the church has had like a really strong, like it's had a huge presence. System that we learned about in PSR, but even in that, the first like people that I think to be like to say like this is not cool were like pastors or like we're fathers of the church and were executed for saying like
Martyred.
Yeah, like that there should be something different other than the Spanish system, and how that has ties and links to the work that we do. It sounds cool. Blam. Family.
Family, feudal patriarchal beliefs spread by the family. This is where the social beliefs on what is right for women in society are first taught and practiced. Adherence to the will of all males in the family. Train to be a good housekeeper. Learn how to be patient and
Who uses the word meek? Like what does that really use to mean?
The conditions of what people have learned, what they watch on TV, what they learn in school, what they want to aspire to be like landlords, and bringing it into the home.
right.
Yeah.
This is also really emphasizing, this is also control, right? Like we're always like the family really sort of discourages the women to really question their place, right? And we've been, even as kids, we've always been raised, don't ask questions, just it is what it is. Why do I have to do it? Because I said so, right? So it's like this idea that in order for you to be a good, either Christian or just a good daughter, just, listen to your parents, listen to your father for sure. And like help around the house, don't ask questions, just do, right? Keep your head down, just keep doing. Feudal beliefs also spread by schools, the proper roles.
Oh, I was gonna say really quickly about family is like also like the family being like a basic unit in society that perpetuates the way that the powers that be want the society to be. So a very Anglican view of like of like how this trickles down to the family is like, especially when you think of capitalism, like our families are the ones that perpetuate capitalistic lifestyles and living. And it's the same thing that's happening here, is that it's trickling into the family when they're perpetuating the feudal patriarchy of society.
Right. So by schools, the proper roles of men and women in society are solidified. Women learn how to place her role in the house in a wider social context or sphere. Children are taught to be passive, to never question what the teacher is saying. Oftentimes, men or boys are sort of pushed towards professions like engineers, doctors, scientists, economists, whereas women or girls are more pushed towards an extension of what they've already been doing since birth. Nurse, teachers, midwife, secretary, caregivers. And by mass media, these beliefs are spread through owned and controlled by the ruling class and bourgeois governments help in strengthening the unfair role of men and women in society, spread the colonial mentality that women's beauty is based only on her physical appearance, and use women's bodies to promote and sell products.
Those pictures are like commodities for like to enhance your breasts. One's for selling alcohol, and then a beauty pageant is the other one.
Is that 10 water?
No, White Castle 16.
What is this soap? Like, what? Okay, so this one guy, his name's Oscar Lopez. He owns all of he owns CSC, ABC,
Banks.
ABS, all of the like newspapers and stuff like that. And he's just one dude that like
One guy.
can perpetuate and like his ideology, but also since he's like big business comprador, part of the 1%, he's promoting the ideology of that class.
One more question for you. I'm just wondering too how like GAB talks about like the gender binary, especially like going back to like these different like paths that are set out for like for the workforce, specifically for men and women, like and how and even all the different discrepancies that we're talking about in terms of how force that is women. But like yeah, just like how does that get talked about within ND? Is something that we've been trying to discuss a little bit at ABNJ, but still like how do we talk about it? Like how does it work? Like how is this like in a way that is accessible to the masses and that applies to their life? And that is still like based on the class analysis. But yeah, just like wondering how y'all talk about it and explain it and see it like operating.
Do we want to talk about that now or later?
We can also interweave it throughout whatever makes more sense.
Maybe. Well, the next slide is this.
Oh,
Might be helpful.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
so we'll
We'll
answer it.
park it. Yeah.
But remember it.
Remember
We don't answer it.
Question.
Very soon.
So remember that because we're gonna go right back to you, okay? All right. So, what is the role of the government in perpetuating these beliefs, culture, and practices? The Philippine government is dominated by the ruling class. Their interest is to maintain the bourgeois and feudal culture. So, as like an example that Cole gave was that we have this one person that controls like all of the media, right? And his perspective and his way or whatever, that's what is getting sort of perpetuated and shown in all of these sort of households throughout the entire country. So that is just one small example of like these interests, these particular interests of this one small group with a lot of power getting perpetuated or being used to sort of just continue these oppressive conditions, not only for women, but everybody else in the Philippines that isn't part of that ruling class. And then it abruptly goes to the triumph of women.
Oh, wait, can I do some
Yeah.
real quick? So when you look at this political cartoon, so this is Uncle Sam, but holding his closest friend. And even if you've taken PSR or haven't taken PSR, these are all past Philippine presidents. And they're holding banners of various policies, mainly economic policies, all of which have had, in addition to the economic policy, there's a U.S. imperialist aspect, which includes a military aspect and also a foreign affairs aspect, obviously. So you look at the Laurel Langley Act, Open Door Policy, Filipino First, all of these that sound wonderful and great for the Philippines, all of which led to extreme Filipinas in the Philippines, right? So all of those led to U.S. occupation and that impact on Filipinas, on the most oppressed classes, on the most oppressed people in the Philippines, and it is all to serve not that huge Uncle Sam face in the back. And and as we know, like Noy Noy has continued that tradition of his mother, who's in the middle. So so this
And also
is
because they're all laced with a string, so it's like
right.
puppet thing.
Yes, so they're all being like held together and at the control of Uncle Sam. But yes, let's go to the very quick transition to triumph.
To triumph.
So how do we end these things?
So the triumph of women, including the enactment of laws, policies, and programs for women, is an indication of the strength and the influence built by the collective effort of organized women. To be able to liberate themselves, women must link arms with the rest of the oppressed Filipino people to change a semi-feudal, semi-colonial society. This will result in the dismantling destruction of the feudal patriarchal system that is controlling women and causing their oppression.
Yes.
Essentially saying.
So easy, right? So easy.
So this, like in our ND analysis, this is really saying that to end oppression against women, first comes to ending these basic problems.
Right.
And then it's not, it would be liberal of us to say that it would be the other way around.
Did we talk about? Oh, what were we gonna say?
No, I wanted to go back
Yeah.
to So you're and you have an example.
The gender binary.
Yeah. Next poll.
Yeah. Hi, live stream. So when I integrated with Lesbon in 2011, so exactly what we just mentioned, what Cole just mentioned about, it's not about there isn't primacy on liberating women, right? The primacy is really because even though half of each of those classes are women, right? Liberating women doesn't lead to the liberation of the most oppressed, right? Like Gloria Macapagal Arroyo doesn't need liberation.
Yeah.
We need liberation from Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who is a senator now, actually. Yeah. The fact that Gloria Arroyo is a senator, Imelda Marcos is a senator. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, and those two women are just as bad as all the men that are there, Because the issue is they're all from the same, that green dot that no one could see at the top of that pyramid, right? So it's not about liberating half of that green dot in addition to half of all the other classes. We really need that bottom of the pyramid to really have a livelihood, right? What it would mean to liberate the most oppressed 90 million people in the Philippines, right? Like what that would mean for our economy, what that would mean for that we wouldn't have forced migration, all of these conditions that we're talking about, how women in each of those classes are impacted. So it's the class basis. So in relation to the binary, the function of how the binary, of course, in the Philippines is even more amplified or just even more stark in the Philippines because of the semi-feudal character of the Philippines, right? Because patriarchy is not the primary thing. Patriarchy is a terrible symptom of feudalism.
Yeah.
And so the binary is even worsened because of that, is because of the feudal views, right, that are perpetuated by people who own businesses, who want to have workers that won't take leave, right? So, so even Gabriela, like Lesbon as a Gabrielle organization, looks at it as we know that we're being targeted, or we know that the gender binary is being exploited because of imperialism. It really is like an economic reason. It's an economic reason, it's a labor reason, it's whatever to serve these, the interests of the businesses, right? So it's because they see me and they think that, you know, for all, like, I won't take leave, I won't get married, I won't have children. So it really is seen as like from the anti-imperialist framework, right? Not that you're specifically being targeted because you have a certain type of gender expression or gender identity. It really is because of your gender expression, because of your gender identity, we're looking at you as a different type of worker that will be less problematic for us. Or for your other of our gender expression, gender identity, we see you as a problematic worker for us. You know, and then what happens is, secondary is what happens in the workplace, right? So people who could be even more targeted for sexual harassment or other types of harassment by their fellow coworkers, by their employers, because of that. But all of that is a function of the fact that they want me to work here. They want me to work here because they think I won't, you know, that I can work more than other people, right? So, so that's how Gabriela, you know, it really is organizing around like the workers issue first, the class issue first, and then because that really is the primacy, and that really is like the root of the conditions in the Philippines, right? It's definitely not, you know, I'm a woman and this is what's happening to me. It's like I'm a woman and that's a particular impact on me, but that's because it's the impact on my class, you know? So, so if that makes sense. And then I just think because also here in the United States, like, you know, a lot of the academic literature that exists in the United States around especially feminism and gender politics, it isn't really accessible in the Philippines. I mean, it's growing, but it's because of the, again, semi-feudal character. But, and also, and the church, yes. You know, the church is like, oh, women and, you know, queer, and then they don't even say, you know, like it really is, even there, it's like lesbian, gay, like there's not really any other, spectrum. Yeah, the spectrum is very narrow. It's even binary in terms. When it's here, actually, so here in the imperialist framework, it does allow for that to study and for it to foster, but if you look at it also, it's also a way for people to stay divided, right? And so, and this is why, like, even organizing, even as that information and as that's growing in the Philippines too, even though organizers are very aware that, you know, this issue, first and foremost, is a workers' issue, right? It's not, you know, and this is my particular condition as a worker who identifies as XYZ. So that's how we usually organize around that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Not really.
If that makes sense.
Did, but yeah, I would just echo. It's based in the class analysis, and it's especially complicated in the Philippines because you have like situations where I was speaking earlier of the like lesbians being most likely to be employed because of labor issues, because they're, you know, can be paid less, but they work like men, or but then conversely is like when people apply for jobs or they go to school and they want to wear like a different uniform, or like they are wearing a different interview outfit. The levels of discrimination that happen are like incredibly rooted in semi-feudal ideology of people, and it's really important to know that is the conditions of the Philippines specifically, and to like not think about it as like how it is here, and that like even the way that like gender identity and politics are growing right now in the Philippines is like just like it's at a really cool place where it's like
So we just want to open it up to you guys. Questions, concerns, you want to add anything?
takeaways.
Takeaways.
Because it got heavier and then all of a sudden it just got light. Last 3 slides. It's like,
Last 3
oh,
slides.
last 3
Want to
slides.
turn on a light?
Okay.
Oh.
Good morning.
We're lit.
Everyone. Okay, light.
Sorry, our question is not answered. Of course. But,
Oh my God.
I just want our more intense
All
questions.
questions.
But one thing that I'm wondering, just like from like taking PSR and stuff like that, like a lot of like I'm like, oh, I want to know more about like all the women that contributed to this, as I know like they're like all part of this history too, you know, like and like we even have like a committee shirt that has like the names of all these women. And I'm like, where do I learn about all these women? You know, like I want to know their stories and like also just more of like the contemporary like women today and everything. But just like if you have recommendations of like resources or like places that we can find more about this or like things we can study as a committee that can like highlight a lot of that stuff that gets lost and is missing. And I mean, a lot of it is just like it's lost, but like yeah, like what are ways that we can be intentional about learning that, like as part of. I mean, not just as a committee, as an organization, but yeah, like where do we find this? Like where do you get it? As a,
Kasamas. There's a lot of like resources. You know, just ask around and people will be able to direct you to like articles, books.
I can share some stuff from the quarter storm, how women played out in the quarter storm.
Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
A 4-part article that we gave out for one of our retreats that I can share with you.
yeah.
Are you guys
is it
just
PDF?
looking for general stuff or is it very specific? Like, are you guys?
I think anything and
General,
everything,
I
right?
just wanna know.
Yeah, Lorena
But like,
Barros.
yeah, like just whatever resources that you have that we can look through and decide, like, oh, this would really fit in with what we're doing right now, or it's like really applicable to like this campaign that we're doing, whatever, you know, just like if there's already like some kind of, I don't know, call it like a database, but you know, like a growing like network or like pool of stuff that you pull from that like you think would be useful.
We'll come to our symposium in January.
Yeah. There's some resources on the GAB USA website, unfortunately, that are password protected. But what we can do is that those of us who have access to the site, we can definitely provide those materials to you. So like examples of impact of women or the role of women. Julieta de Lima is someone. She, you might know who her partner is.
Joma.
Yeah. So, Julieta or Julie publishes a lot. Just as much as Joma actually. On what it means for national democracy, but also she has published papers on women. You know, there are other resources that that we can provide, just like Maze, that we provide a bunch of information with our orientation packet, and that's something that we can furnish to women's committee members. And as we know that women's committees are definitely welcome to attend our GA, are welcome to participate in our ED symposiums. We can also, you know, and we've had discussions with opening any of these things up to like building and comprehensive building, especially in YS spaces, you know, is, you know, those are resources, just like Arlene said, that you can help with.
And then also like just keep asking like the room, like if you're in like it's like if you go to Congress, for example, and you're like learning about something at ED, oftentimes if you're like, oh, like what was the role of women, or you keep bringing women to the forefront, like people might remember, or like they might be the resources who like you can learn more from that just didn't have that opportunity to share. Because I think that's, I mean, that's the reason why, one of the reasons why GAB really exists is to consistently ask, where are the women? Are you thinking about how this impacts women and children? And that can be, that's a place, that's a really good place to start.
Anything else?
Well, when you like how to really like frame like queer and gender politics. Well, not that specifically, but just things that cut through the tatsulok. I think it was explained to me before, but I think in other ways it has been brought up, and I wasn't sure how to give a deep analysis other than like it cuts through like class lines. So I think that was really a really good refresher. So now I can, when it comes up again, I can be like, yes, this is how. Yeah.
And this is like the condensed version.
Yeah.
All the long versions. All the long versions.
Ask Katrina Cortez how long her BWO was. She took it in the bay.
Oh, shit.
All day.
Wow.
12 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize we did long courses of anything in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's never enough time.
Well.
Any other questions or like just like things you're thinking about or you're still like grappling with?
We had lots of conversation about like, sex work. Gabrielle,
I
you
kind
were
of
saying
think
something.
too, like one thing we didn't talk, or like you kept mentioning like women and children too, like in terms of like childcare or like women that are working, like that have children, like what is usually, I mean like family and stuff like that, but yeah, like what are different obstacles that women face in terms of childcare or just like providing for their children in that way when they're like working or like peasant women, especially like younger children that like aren't also like working or like, doing things like that.
I think particularly for like working women and peasant women, children come with their moms or the female adult. Like I don't know if you all heard about Kentex with that factory fire. Like 47 people died. No, 72 people died. 40 something of them were women. So most of them were women, and they were also children. And these their children, like entire families. And that unfortunately is not rare. Like children often accompany their parents, or like what Jana was saying, when women have to leave and they're forced to leave their children behind. So the young girls or the young kids have to work and are exposed to the conditions of labor at a very young age.
Yeah, when I was on my first expo in 2011, and we were in the Cordillera, and we did production work, which is part of anyone who's got an expo, you are going to do some sort of production work. And so when it was time to plant rice, which is not easy, and so you're like planting rice, and my palai, of course, because I'm from here, kept falling, right? And there's a 3-year-old girl who is like, and then she looked at me, and I was like, oh. Like, clearly you've been doing this for some time, even though you're 3, JL. So, I mean, that's the thing. She's already learning production work, like, before. I mean, she did it like, she didn't learn it yesterday, and she's 3.
Yeah.
So, like, she's nobody. Like, Noah, like, teaching me how to plant palette, and, like, me, it took me, like 15 minutes to, like, try and get it to stand, and she's like, and that she had this whole row, and I was like, it's like, I'm gonna just work it out, struggle it out. And but that's the thing, like a 3-year-old girl, right? Like did that. So, and then when we were farming, the majority, almost all of them were all women who were farming. So from a very young age, like that's how women are already reared of what their role is in the family. Right, like even before you even go to school, you're already knowing how you need to learn how to plant rice first, because that is the way that we live. That's the way we survive. And when you think of all of the things that come with peasant farming, right, that they can't even eat the rice that they're planting. So, I mean, this is a consolidated community, it's a little different, but so they're able to eat the rice that they're planting. But still, like understanding that the primacy of production work, right? Because even the education system is from the US, right? So, you know, it's not important for you to learn English. It's not important for you to read and write English, and even before you read and write, it's more important for you to know how to plan rights. So so that's usually, you can see like even the gendered aspect of production work already from a very young age.
And that's also why like women and children are included in like Gabriela Philippines like campaigns to end violence, because if the women who are subject to violence, if their families, their children are also most likely to be susceptible to violence in the home or by society or through forced migration. And these are all things that are connected. Like you can't liberate women without like ending these systems, which also impact the young people. So children are often, and women and their children are like connected, and when we think about the violence.
Can I take the opportunity to read the 7 deadly sins? Since we were talking about violence against women, there's actually 7 types that Gabriela highlights. 7 forms of violence against women are sex trafficking and prostitution. That's 1. 2 is domestic violence. 3 is rape, incest, and sexual abuse. 4 is sexual harassment. 6 is limited access to reproduction health care. And 7 is violence as a result of political repression. And violence against women is defined as the use of intimidation, threat, forced or coerced physical, sexual, psychological, and emotional abuse against women. This can happen both inside the home, in the community, or at the hands of the state and government. And this is a direct violation of basic human rights.
Even in terms of economic violence, like, the slide that said that the poorest Filipinos live on less than $2 a day. According to the World Bank, if you earn more than $1.25 a day, you're not considered poor. So what they think of what livelihood means to them, right? Livelihood, depending on who knows these people in the World Bank, right? None of them are living on $125, but way more than $125 a day. So, but that's like, you can't allow that system to define what it means to have a livelihood as a worker, as a peasant. So, and just how, like, again, like Arlene was saying about, we don't get double credit for doing double duty, right? And how many women are earning less than that $2 threshold, but have to do all of the things that are invisible work, right? Because it's just seen as like part of the women's domain, right? And the women's domain, which is seen as no value, right, in an economic system, because that actually is in addition to, you still need to contribute in the economic system, but your work as a mother or as a caregiver is not primary, right? It's just seen as like a function of being a woman, but there's no economic value, so therefore it's not seen as important.
Any other additions?
I was gonna use an example from someone posted that everyone, or maybe most folks, are aware that the election campaign is currently happening in the Philippines, and some of the politicians are hiring like scantily clad, barely dressed bikini women, and they're like giving politicians lap dances on stage as a way of like promoting like vote for this guy.
I saw that. I don't know if it was related to the campaign, but he was wearing yellow, and so was the lady. But I think it was like at his like birthday party or something too. Yeah.
But no, this was like after his like
Election.
talking about like.
It was like a party, wasn't it? Like party for the party.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, it also was like they had like the campaign slogan like on the background, but then like he was lying down on stage, and there was someone like walking over him on top, like vote for him.
Was it Thursday?
I gotta check again.
Just say it's something.
Because someone tagged me or Gabriella was like, check this out, this is ridiculous.
Oh, it's here.
Oh my God, both are like cameras.
Which whoever went to IPT knows Neri, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh my God.
Thank you so much.
Oh no.
I was gonna ask, yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes like in it's like co-ed spaces, I don't know, like where you have like both men and women. You know, a part of that is just like lack of consolidation, but like, are there like specifics that, you know, women would like to see happen?
Don't let it
Be very, very aware that it can even happen in
Oh, it's blue.
And it really is about accountability, right? Like we all have to be accountable, not only for each other, but for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? There is something to be said about that whole cliche, like step up, step back. Like if just be very sort of aware, right? And accountable for your actions. Like as a woman, as a man, you know, as a queer, it doesn't matter. But when you're in that space and you're sharing any sort of shared space, you have to be very aware of your presence and you have to be very aware of how you're interacting. And it, you know, it takes a lot. Like, you know, it's very easy for us to sort of, you know, just be on autopilot and whatever comes natural because that's how we were raised, whatever, right? It's very easy for us to sort of revert to that sort of state. But when you're in, you know, specifically to your point, like co-ed spaces, you have to be aware. You have to be aware of your own privilege as a man in a space, right? And, you know, and as a woman, we also have to be aware as you know, we just be aware of our sort of place and like understand where we fit in and, you know, don't overassert but assert yourself. You know, like we have our own sort of things that we have to negotiate within ourselves, right? So it isn't like if you are going to do something, it isn't, oh, let me do something so that the women in the space can feel comfortable, right? It's let me do something because I know like this is what it should be, right? So it takes time. Like it's one of those, you know, this is just one of those first steps of being, you know, raising your own sort of awareness of like these conditions that are so innate and then so sort of like just there that, you know, when we're doing BW, we're like, oh shit, yeah, that is wrong. Sorry, my bad. Like, you know, so.
Yeah, I agree with accountability. And it doesn't have to be, you know, it's not, I mean, it would be liberal for a woman to be like, oh, hey, that's not cool. You're using, obviously you're exhibiting male privilege, but it's also not cool for anyone in the space to allow that to happen, right? So it's, you know, so it never is seen as like it's not a woman's duty, right? It really is like any function of, if there's any sort of manifestation of feudalism or feudal behavior in collective spaces, the onus is on the collective, right? To ensure that that doesn't continue, or if it does continue as part of a remolding process, that the collective helps with, you know, and, you know, women are also capable of exhibiting feudal behavior, right? Like, you know, saying, etc., like taking certain roles or whatever, or saying I can't participate because of X, Y, Z. So I think, so it really is on the collective to just root out any sort of behavior like that.
And that happens through like continuous assessment, continuously looking at these situations when that happens and like what you can do to hold each other more accountable. But that requires time, which in capitalist society we don't have, but making sure that that is a priority is really important.
How many times have we taken 5 golden rays? A million.
And one.
Oh, we should take 5 golden rays around. We should take all the EPs again.
Every time,
all the EPs, all the trainings.
Yeah, so we're good. Let's close it out.
You guys want to do assessment?
Oh, yeah. Or something. We'll
Or we
do
can do
or
that, I
something.
don't
Let's do or
Yeah.
something.
Let's box up so we can close the.
Oh,
I think assessment is.
Unless people want to watch this.
Oh, we can do a quick left delta and then we'll.
Yeah, let's do
just go
assessment
around.
then.
So we're doing popcorn.
Yeah. Or we can go around. Yeah,
Ooh.
deltas. As yeah, presenters and facilitators and participants.
Pull up a quick table.
Oh,
You see that?
table.
Oh, bring it back.
Okay, who wants to start?
Okay. It was really good. I liked how it was. Well, obviously the focus is on the women's sector because you are GAB. But it was appreciated because you know, a lot of the EDs that we do, it's not solely on that perspective because we are comprehensive NYS. So it was good to learn more about the particulars of that. And then it was good to hear about your life experiences, especially for those who went to Expo and were really able to put like kind of like faces and like, you know, like really connect that to our like petty B state kind of thing. Yeah, it was really good. I guess the delta would just be, I wish the visuals were like updated and so the stats, but that's like, it's not that big of a deal. And I know we've kind of had a similar issue for some of our other stuff that I updated. but just generally, if there comes a point where you have capacity to do so, I think that would be good. Otherwise, it's like really minor.
That's great.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you for the space. Like, this is a great space. It was very conducive to the ED. And thank you just for being on point when it's positive. Just, we got a projector, we got live stream, we got all that going on. We got food
ordered like
and we started relatively on time.
Yeah.
I projected 1 o'clock start.
No,
but
why?
that's all thank you. I'd have to echo your sort of deltas with the stats being updated. Relatively recent. Well, yeah, but like, you know, when it comes to like collecting information, that's pretty recent.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be, that's one of the things that I would like to see with BWO in the future.
Also, our visuals are coming, most of the caricatures or like their political, what's it called? The
Political cartoons.
Yeah. But a lot of the drawings came from the I Devour campaign that GAB had. I mean, that's originally where it came from, those pictures. So when I listed the 7 deadly sins, those that came from that pamphlet. So I can also share that brochure for the women's community.
Okay. Yeah.
Those are your positives.
Oh, positives. No, I didn't. That we're in Jersey and I love Jersey. I'm thinking I might even want to look for a living here. Because I have an issue with housing, and then it's now just coming to me like right now. I haven't even thought of ever moving to New Jersey, but that's kind of maybe a thing.
Yeah.
Brian and Gina are looking for housing too.
And Delta, no Delta.
Wow.
I'm trying to think. Do I have to?
I guess so.
everything's been provided and supported, so it's really good.
I want to check the facilities and everything. I mean, I love coming. Let me see. And last time I did BWO here last time. So this is always
When
a
was that?
comfortable space.
It was this summer, right? This
Or
year.
the spring, maybe?
Spring. It was
Oh,
with
you did it here?
Ruthie and Beatrice and and Joelle and Ian. Yeah. I was tapping on them a lot of times for Expo. So I think one of the positive things about BW especially is to be able to link, to give concrete examples too, because it is hard, like, you know, even when the hardest time to facilitate BW is for folks who are from the fields, because sometimes they're like, that's not true, that doesn't happen, and it's like, well, it's because you're petty feet. You don't see it that way. Have you been to Mindanao? I have been to the Cordy. So, no, they are from QC. They're from, you know, I don't know, Cubao. So, we're discussing is like the most oppressed millions of Filipinos. So, so to connect that to recent Expo experiences or other experiences are very helpful. Positive is co-facilitated by a mom, hey! Because there's not more, you know, better example of what, you know, like basic women's orientation, you know, it's not like everyone's baby and single, you know, and childless. Like that really is part of the basic women's orientation, you know, of being able to have like members to provide childcare, you know, like, you know what I'm saying? So, and there have been members in AB that have had children and had to dip, you know, so we're trying to show that revolutionary attitude in that because there are these major changes in your life doesn't mean that you cannot continue organizing, right? So,
Can I add to the positive too? Childcare, amazing childcare. Okay, sorry.
no, that's an important part, you know, I mean, it's how we're able to have, you know, like all of our members be able to participate, you know, so, and we actually still just need to keep getting better at that. Deltas.
The cat.
Yeah.
What happened?
I said the cat, but it hasn't been an issue.
So it's a positive.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really have deltas. I don't really have deltas either, I think. Yeah.
Oh shoot, where is the cat?
Exactly.
Where's that cat?
Are we all
allergic to cats?
It's
No, I
it's
love
crazy.
it.
It wants to leave. It's like swiped at Yves
Oh,
too.
wow.
It's everyone.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, keep that cat away.
But somebody can pick it up. I've seen it get picked.
And then
it reveals true.
Oh.
That my husband faces over.
Wait, does it come up and swipe, or does it when you
Yeah.
approach it, it swipes?
Shakes
Or-
you.
But it comes up to you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not cool.
It's nice.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Hi.
Make this a part of like prepping for our EDs is like to ensure that we have the most up-to-date information. So like if that means that we're facilitating an ED in 2 months, like then we're looking at the ED now and we're so, yeah, programming changes
And so we could ask all of EC to.
to weigh in.
Yeah.
Updates. I would like to, I think I'm like a really visual and active person, so for me, facilitation style is important. So I think, this wasn't even a problem for me today, but like, in general, I'd love to see us use more facilitation, differentiation in our facilitation. And maybe we can have training.
Yeah.
Training.
Ding! Ding! Which, you know, is possible if we have a whole day.
Yeah.
to facilitate.
Positives, all of these things. Definitely check on this. I really appreciated just the richness of conversation. Like openness, general openness to like these things that we're presenting, and the desire to bring this back. Because it's one thing to like take an ED, but to then also like apply it.
I agree with all the positives. Yeah, no, it was great to also have so many people from GAB here. I'm really excited just to get to like meet more of you, because like I only get to see y'all when like I go to New York. So it's good to have y'all here. And just that, like there were so many facilitators. I feel like really like pampered, like, like to hear like all your different stories and perspectives, and like yeah, I also really appreciate hearing about people's like expo experiences, especially like because people just like come back and stuff. Like those were the like moments that like really like helped me to like really understand and concretize for me. So that's always something I like to see. Yeah, and like I had like kind of ideas about. I was like, I think it's this, but I'm like, but like now I feel like way better about it, and just like more excited to like delve into it with them. Yeah, and just like to hopefully like this can also be just like a way for us to like continue working together and collaborating and having a conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm glad for that. I see it much more beyond it too. Yeah, let's see, in terms of, I don't know, I just like always want to know more things. So like maybe for Delta's like something I would like love to hear more about is just like what like campaigns like GAB has done, or like examples of work that GAB does, especially in the Philippines. Yeah, just like, because like that, like that victory sign, like victories. Yeah. So I was just like, but like, what are they? You know? You know, like so, because like it's so important to like know that too. You know, especially like after like all that those heavy or like first part, to be able to really see like what power women really have, and like what have they really achieved, like in ND. Something that just like really energizes me and good to hear.
I like that one. That's a great one.
Positive. Y'all seem really experienced, like organized. No, that it makes sense because this is your life. I think Delta is. I wish more of our members were here. Yeah. Especially because a couple of them have taken AWO, so it would have been interesting to see their perspective.
Yeah. And taking it a second time really does add another lens. Once again, you're like you are hearing it for the first time, so even the second time, there's more, even more.
I feel like for any ED too, because then I think what Joel said before is like there's not always gonna be the same people that will be taking that ED with you. So then there's more richness of like experiences to like contribute to like your learning and understanding of whatever is being taught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that, I guess part of that is on me because
It's okay. We got the life. It's okay.
It's not direct.
Re-education minister.
Lol, the minister.
Just kidding. Just kidding. Just lunch.
Are you?
Yeah, I think I want to echo or definitely childcare. I think that's really great to see like in practice because people are like, yeah, we should do childcare, and then it's like, oh, he had a child. That's funny. I'm like, oh god.
That's real though.
And also definitely like the fact that like all of y'all came out here, which is really great. Jersey's not too far, but people don't want to come here ever. No, totally. So it's really great to like not to have like so many co-facilitators as well. Just like there's a giant like wealth of knowledge, and it's also just like great to see lots of people. I think some pros are like, yay, we have a women's committee, so like yay, we I had another one, but yeah, yay, women's committee.
Scroll up. Please scroll.
Oh yeah, I think so. One of the positives was that like y'all answered questions really well, which is true. Y'all answered questions really well, but they were also really good questions in general. And yeah, I think that's important to note. And then for deltas, I think I'm kind of stretching on this one, but like one thing that I do when I facilitate things, which I've never done an ED and just like workshop-y things, but I like making research sheets to like for people to have at the end. One of the questions that Anna asked was like, where can we like, who are writers that we could look to? Who are like things, where are resources, things like that. And I the resources is like existent resources. I think it's really cool to be able to provide that and be like, hey, look, so like here are some things. And like this is like a physical list of things you could look at. But also that takes a lot of time. Like I've made them before and they take so much longer than I thought they would every single time. So, but yeah, I think that would be great, especially to pass out when like y'all are meeting with other orgs and not just like internally.
Yeah. Cool. Very good. Thanks, guys.
I can't wait to facilitate you again.
Anything else?
Thanks for coming.
I just realized it's almost our full EC is here, except for one
Our
person.
cultural director.
Yeah.
Julie Jamora.
Oh.
Yeah.
MCT.
One of the babysitters upstairs.
All right. Are we bag sacking?
Tennessee. Yeah, right. Wait. What would be the challenges for that?
It looks like artichoke. I don't know what's artichoke. It's like, what's
No, this is
artichoke?
Darth Vader.
No, on the other side, right? Looks like
That's
yeah, it's true. On the side.
I thought it was like chips.
No.
Artichoke chips.
That one.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's fancy.
They like crush nuts and they dip them.
Yeah, they're pricey.
And then they drizzle like stuff on it too.
A pack comes with like 5 of them.
I know. It's like
One whole thing.
Yeah.
For like $3.
No, like
$5?
Yeah, it's like $4.99.
Yeah, no, they're
Yo, the peanuts are probably like $2.
But they aren't. They're thicker than this.
Yeah.
They're like.
Oh, I know.
three.
Oh, I know.
They're like
Yeah.
three as thick as like 3 sticks.
Well,
Yeah.
the shorter ones and the shorter.
No, they're not. They're actually
Like the
they're like
coating, right?
deluxe pocky.
yeah.
I went to Sunrise Mart with Jay, right? And I saw him pick up like this big box of Pocky. I was like, what are you gonna do with those? Like, why are you gonna?
Consume them.
Come on, let's do it. It's $7 up. Come on. Remember?
No.
Oh,
There's no one to do the butt stuff.
Yeah.
No one likes to play.
You ready?
Betty Wap is about to
Need your
play.
hands.
Call it.
Oh,
What's the call it?
Someone from the women's
yeah.
Women's committee.
Is this like a first person box?
Yeah, okay. So for
You guys just do it.
having people, well, having GAB coming over and having a really rich BWO and have giving the people who haven't taken BWO the opportunity to take it for the first time, and then many more visits to Jersey to come. Yeah, isang baksak. Woo!
You're not
Ba-bam!
effective though.
Ba-bam! Ba-bam!
Stop broadcasting. Stop
But if you
broadcasting.
want to